And we're live. Just kidding.
We are live.
Aha! I was trying to time it to be cool, but I don't know if I was cool. I'll have to go back and check later. Was I cool?
Maybe. I don't know.
And we're live.
Hey, Danny, on the money.
We have been.
Well, again, the countdown that we see is not when we go live. We are live the moment I hit record.
And I feel like lately the countdown's been kind of late.
Thinks it.
Like, what do you mean?
Like I feel like the countdowns started started counting down from 5 after we started streaming.
It does. That is what I just said.
Yeah. So
do you mean even more delay than supposed?
Maybe it's just on my end. Yeah.
It never, even when we weren't live and I hit record, it never started the countdown right when. It was always a few seconds out.
Well, there we go.
Well, what do you know?
Yes. Yep.
And we're live.
Oh, friends, welcome. I am very sad today. I'm sad because it is the end of a campaign. It is the end of some character stories that we have been with for the last 2 years. I'm sure you all feel connected to these characters that you made. I'm sure some of the listeners feel connected to some of these characters. And we have a wonderful opportunity to finish their stories in appropriate ways. You'll notice, this is not going to be the normal length episode we have. Normally episode's about an hour and a half, hour 50, somewhere in there. I think this is going to be shorter, but we want it to have an epilogue episode on its own just to kind of feel like we could wrap up this story instead of like sticking it on the end of last episode. You'll notice that Nick is not with us. Nick is on a plane to Japan right now. And so
in a better place.
He's in a better place. He's in
Nick's
heaven.
in a better place.
A plane to Japan. Is that what we're calling it?
Is that a better place? I feel like Japan's a better place, so he's not so much there yet.
He's
Depends
on a plane
on the
to
airline.
a better place. He's on a plane to a better place. What this is going to look like is that we're going to just go through each of the characters. We're going to do a scene, an improv role-playing scene with each of them. And at the end of that scene, I'll read kind of an overview summary of the rest of that character's life. I've written all these ahead of time, and I have sent them to all the players. So there's nothing that I share in these summaries that the players themselves were not all right with, that they
Though
explicitly
we
signed
haven't
off.
seen each other's scenes.
That's
Correct.
right.
Sent them to the player who plays that character.
Correct.
Oh, I'm
yes.
so ready and so not ready.
Yeah.
Correct. Before we get into that, though, I wanted to talk about announcements, and then we'll kind of just hang out for a little bit before we get into it. Because again, this isn't going to go the full 2 hours. But last year, right? We ended our season. We took a little, month and a half off. We were still doing content, but it was way lower stakes, just us kind of goofing off and having fun. And then we jumped back into it in the fall. We're going to do something similar again this year. So I'm going to share that with you now. We'll put this schedule up somewhere on social and Discord as well. But for the next 2 weeks, so July 16th and July 23rd, while Nick is absent, the 4 of us are going to play a Forged in the Dark game called Apocalypse Road Trip. It is a story about just average people caught in an apocalypse of aliens and kaiju and like military oversight. I am very excited. I was reading the rules and I texted these buffoons and I was like, whoa, I just had the greatest idea. You're supposed to play just like average people caught in an apocalypse. What if the 3 of you played yourselves? And so Johnny and all of them were like, that's brilliant. Let's do it. And so they're going to play them in an apocalypse with kaiju monsters and aliens. And I can't wait. It's going to be a ton
I'm
of
so
fun.
excited.
Stoked.
So that's July 16th and 23rd. And then July 30th, Nick is back. We've got something very special planned that week. We're going to be playing what I'm calling Project Spark in the Dark. We are going to be playing one session of Blades in the Dark set in our Avatar story. It'll be a flashback to a heist and like criminal move that Chainow Launcher heads up back before he left Project Spark and the shadow of his father. So he'll be leading a group of other Project Spark criminals, which will be played by Danny, Steve, and Johnny. And they will get on some criminal heist. And I'm very excited to see where that ends up. And
Can I be a smooth criminal?
Absolutely. Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Maybe a really rough.
Johnny's so disappointed.
Just,
criminal.
that's going to make a very inappropriate joke. Can I?
Oh God.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have to avoid that.
Thought better. And then the week after that is August 6th. We're actually going to take a well and true deserved week off. That is mainly because Danny, Nick, and I will be at Gen Con, and
Whoop,
I
whoop.
can't see us feasibly doing anything that week. So
Come to Gen Con. Come find us.
come to Gen Con.
Give us
I'll be
a
running
big
some
old slap on the face.
I'll slap you in the face, and then we'll play Urban Shadows together.
Yeah.
That's a good pitch right there. Who could say no?
And then
slap you in the face.
And then after that, August 30th and 20th, we're going to do what we did last year, which was Behind the Bison. That was a lot of fun doing it. We'll break it up probably like we did last time, where we talk about the first half of season 2 and then the second half of season 2. But we'll also be able to sort of, I think, now talk about like the campaign as a whole, and that Danny will be hosting that again. It's going to be a ton of fun. We'll get into all the fun behind the scenes junk of what goes on and how we make decisions and all that. So I'll probably put like sometime like a couple weeks before like a post on Reddit and an announcement in Discord. So you'll know where to like drop any questions if you have them. And then so that's August 30th and 20th. We'll do Behind the Bison. And then the August 27th to September 17th. So 4 weeks. We will be playing a game called External Containment Bureau, which is a like paranormal investigation game. And I'm really excited for this for the main reason that we won't have Steve, we and Nikki, the rest of like all of the crew of both the new Avatar Legends show and the old Avatar Legends actual play are going to be playing together. So it'll be Danny, Johnny, Gus, Will, and Nick, I think, when he's back. So that'll be a lot of fun to like all kind of play together and form like a unified, cohesive cast.
It'll be so fun.
It's going to be a blast. And then September 24th is at least the first episode of Scum and Villainy. I'm not quite sure. We haven't quite worked out when the Avatar Legends campaign will be, but it'll be sometime in that week or around then. So September 24th is when we will start the new season of the new game. So we've got like a nice like couple months of just kind of like goofing off and hanging out and before we jump into Scum and Villainy.
Wow, but this is a great time to help us if you're considering supporting us. Because once we hit the stride of both shows weekly, it's going to be a lot, and we're nervous and excited. But support would mean a ton right now, especially so that we can get some well-deserved art. I feel like our characters deserve it. We almost got some. Bunch of stuff happened. We never got it. We need it. I need it.
maybe behind the bison we can share what happened with the art. But
I think we could. I think we owe it to our listeners, because at some point, I don't know where we said it, but we were like, we're gonna get art for our characters.
It's a story.
Stuff happened. It's a story.
Justin, are we gonna publish that schedule anywhere so that people have access to it?
No, this is the only place you'll ever hear it. No. Like I said,
hope you took notes.
We'll put it in. We'll put it on our socials, as well as we'll probably put its schedule in Discord as well too. So,
excellent.
Wonderful. I had a realization the other day. I think I've said this. I've said this live. I've said this to all of you that this is the first time I've ever done a homebrew campaign. I've only ever run pre-written stuff, and I also realized that this is the first time I've ever ended a campaign like as like a cohesive story, like as a and then we're ending it here at this moment. These characters' stories are over. Every other campaign I've ever GM'd just ended because people's lives got busy, someone moved away, par for course for tabletop role-playing games.
Same. We never ended a campaign.
Have any of you like been a part of like a good and true end to a campaign that wasn't like a rush, that was like, this is the end and we're all on board and excited about the end?
No,
cannot say I have. It's so rare in the world of TTRPGs.
It is so rare.
And I think part of that's for a good reason, which is that generally people just want to continue playing and it's just life that gets in the way.
Yeah.
So they don't deliberately wind down, and be like, let's wrap this up, everybody.
Yeah. I also feel like, I mean, you hear these stories of like groups that have these like 8-year campaigns of the same characters in the same world. And I'm like, that's crazy. Like, how do you keep like telling those characters' stories? Yeah. Like it's wild. And I'm sure it's done.
A 40-year campaign.
What?
I've heard of a 40-year campaign.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I saw a video on that.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
There was some cool coverage on that and a lot of tears shed when characters died and things like that.
Yeah,
understandably.
How terrible would it be if, like, let's say like 40 years was when they ended it, right? And your character lives for 39 years and then like the last session they die. I would be so sad. I'd be so sad.
It could be a fitting end, though. I mean,
What if they knowing me, they would just like fail an acrobatics check and like plummet down a ravine or something?
After all this time.
If I was a GM, I'd be like, he wouldn't have died if he was a gunslinger.
This might be a like extension of my clinical. It's possible, but I do not feel that level of attachment to my characters living by any means.
Well, I think you showed that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think our listeners are acquainted. I think part of that holding things loosely, even the lives of precious characters, is part of good writing, though, too.
Mm-hmm.
So. No, it's true. Yeah, it's true. It's So this has been a blast. I'm sad Nick isn't here because it has been Monroe, and it has been some of the best moments of my life over the last 2 years is doing this for you all. You're all wonderful players. I cherish and adore 3 of you and Nick and Monroe so dearly. And just sentimental and sad. And I love you guys.
Love you too, Justin.
Likewise.
We love you, Justin. I feel like for me, it's like taught me so much. Like doing this with you guys, just in a very generalized term, and I've learned a lot from this. I feel like about myself, about like all you, and it's been cool.
Yeah. I was in a really, really, really dark place when this came up, and really isolated, and didn't have a lot of people, and so this was like very timely for me. It's meant a lot.
This meant nothing to me.
Jesus Christ.
Sorry, I just knew after that beautiful tenderness that I would go for the laugh.
You had to. It was right there. Sure, it was low hanging fruit from some would say, but you had to grab it.
Begging for it to be over as soon as it started.
I feel nothing.
Hands to me.
What a beautiful journey this has been.
Yes.
I feel bittersweet about ending it, and yet I do feel like I've had time to warm up to it and embrace it and like welcome all of the new stories that we'll tell and the opportunity to like weave stories into the story we've already created. Like we have new FBP canon that we can use. It's just so cool to me. So that'll be fun.
I'm super glad this isn't the end of us playing together. It's just the end of
Yep. And that was the thing.
If this was that.
That'd be so sad if that was like the bait and switch. I was like, this is it. This is the last. We're not doing any of that stuff I talked about between now and August, September 24th.
I've changed.
The schedule is no schedule.
That's why we're not posting it anywhere. No,
I'm sorry. I'm just riffing. I just feel like it'd be a horrible and hilarious way to like show that you're ending a show by posting a schedule and it just has nothing on it. We're really excited about all of our upcoming events and we'll see you soon. Maybe. And then it just has nothing. Anyway.
Nothing.
It's probably coming next.
It's probably very torturous of me, but
it is. It's also, I feel like there'd be so many people who'd be like, I don't understand. What is happening?
The comments would just be like, hey, there's an error. You didn't.
Yeah. You'd be like, no, there isn't. There's no error. But don't elaborate any further. No, that's right. That's it.
We just couldn't say goodbye.
No. We're very excited to play Scum and Villainy. I know some of you have already talked to me a little bit about the characters you want to play, and I'm so freaking excited. I've been listening to like synthwave jazz to like get in the mood for Scum and Villainy. Good stuff. Good stuff.
You know, I watched the trailer for the new Zack Snyder space opera that's coming out at the end of this year. Netflix. It's a Zack Snyder directed space opera. It's coming out. It's like what he imagined Star Wars should be is what it's kind of like the basic premise. But I watched that and got super hyped.
All right. Yeah. I'm hoping we lean a little bit more into space western than space opera, but I think it'll be impossible to not have space opera moments in there for sure. If you haven't, it is a fine difference. It's a fine difference, but it's there. If you haven't noticed, I like telling epic stories about heroes.
I think I have noticed. Yeah.
Yeah. If you haven't noticed it all over the last 2 years. All right, we've been putting this off for long enough.
Time.
It is time. It is time to start. So like I said, I'm gonna set a scene for each of the characters. And these scenes will be pretty soon after your fight with Kavo. You know, I am not interested in like this is exactly when it happened, because I think at this point we're using these scenes as a catalyst to see the rest of their story. And so, with that being said, I'm gonna pull up my notes here. This episode I have obviously the most amount of notes for because I have like a ton of like written pieces for this. Camera opens on a modest house in the lower ring of Ba Sing Se. And as it moves closer, we see figures darting back and forth in a hurry, carrying pots and pans, cutting boards. And then Sanfen Launcher settles in the center of the window and begins to wash a pot that she's holding. And as we move past the window into the kitchen, the cacophony of an active and live kitchen begins. There's water boiling and meat and vegetables sizzling on a wok and the rhythmic sound of a knife chopping a cutting board. Chainmail Launcher is multitasking. He's currently holding one arm out under a pot, heating the water with the tiniest bit of magma, and with his other hand chopping a large carrot. And on the other side of the table, Rozek is currently pinching the top of a dumpling and setting it down next to a plate of dozens of dumplings. And Sanfen turns from the sink and says, I don't know what came over you two coming here and cooking all of this food. I'm happy to clean, but will you just tell me what this is about? And Che looks at her and says, it's nothing, Mom. Just dinner. We're cooking for our friends when they get back to our house, and our kitchen's too small. That doesn't work. You could come if you want to. I mean, there'll be some other people there too. I'll think about it, dear. And the three of them continue to cook and clean. And after some time, Che looks to his mom and says, all right, please join us. It's time to go. And the three of you pack up the rest of the food, and you pray to the spirits that it'll stay somewhat warm on the train ride to the upper ring. And miraculously it does. And you don't walk to your house, though. You begin walking to the Earth Palace. And right outside of the Earth Palace, Sanfen stops the two of you and goes, okay, I held my tongue when we obviously weren't going to your house, but what are we doing here? And Che just looks over his shoulder and unceremoniously says, family picnic, and just continues on into the palace, past the guards and down the stone stairs to the prison. Sanfen catches up and walks ahead of the two Launcher brothers, and Che stops Rosic at the top of the stairs that go down to the prison. He grabs your shoulder and goes, hey, I'm glad you're here, Rosic. I know the two of us have our own thing that we have, and we created our own family, but Sanfen and Now Zhao will always be your family too. Yes, messed up family for sure. They're a power-hungry despot on one hand, and the literal personification of avoidance on the other, but family nonetheless. So I'm happy you're here. What do you say, Rosic? What do you do?
Rosic stands there smiling for a while. I wouldn't be anywhere else, Che. I wouldn't have it any other way. Let's go eat some dumplings with our terrible family.
At least the dumplings are pretty good. And he continues down the stairs. And you walk down the hallway until you get to a cell with a familiar face in it. No longer shackled against the wall directly, but still tied up and tied in this cell is Now Zhao Launcher. He sees the three of you, and he looks at Che, and he says, finally, you told the guards it's mealtime, huh? He sits down. You start taking the food out, handing it to him, eating. Hey, look at us, huh? The band, back together again. Looks like that prophecy is finally coming true after all. And the sound kind of cuts out. We see the four of you sharing a meal together. We sort of zoom away from that and black, and when it comes back, it's like that Japanese parchment style art. And we see scenes that I'm about to describe. It's like all the scenes that I'm about to describe, and the words are just zooming up from the top. Chain Owl Launcher never stayed in one place for too long. For those that knew him, this didn't come as a surprise. Ever since finding freedom from his father, Cate always saw the injustices of the world as too looming to ignore. Sure, he spent a considerable amount of time in Ba Sing Se, but even then, never sat still. Some days you could find him at the Earth Palace, annoying Shoban with all the flaws he saw in the organizational structure of the Dai Li. I think...
No.
I think that was him saying, I think I'm frozen.
Oh, no. Did you guys also lose him at Dai Li right after he said Dai Li?
No, he said Dai Li.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
A beautiful and fitting end.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this.
Hope you guys enjoyed it. That's everything we prepared.
Let's just say we were a little unprepared for this. So.
The two of you were of one mind on how to transition there.
I'm back.
All right. The last thing that you said was Dai Li.
I'm honestly just going to start over.
Okay.
Just going to start over. Chainao Launcher never stayed in one place for too long. And for those that knew him, this didn't come as a surprise. Ever since finding his freedom from his father, Cate always saw the injustices of the world as too looming to ignore. He spent a considerable amount of time in Ba Sing Se, but even then, never sat still. Some days you could find him at the Earth Palace, annoying Shoban with all of the flaws he saw in the organizational structure of the Dai Li. To be fair, most of these flaws were legitimate, a fact which Shoban was hard-pressed to admit. The two formed a strong mutual respect for each other as time went on. Cate found it difficult to talk about how he really felt with Liko, and funnily enough, found the only person really able to understand was his father, Nao Zhao. And as Cate would visit the Earth Palace prison, the two would talk, and through the years, Cate found a way to understand his father, accept his family, and hold his own life. And as the tension between Cate and Nao Zhao lessened, he realized that something happened along his journey. He wanted to be part of Sanfen's life too. It was awkward at first, but Cate found a way to develop a relationship with the woman who Cate blamed for years for abandoning him. But now, he was able to see the effort Sanfen went into protecting what was in her power to protect. Sometimes Cate would leave Ba Sing Se and his brother for months at a time, staying with and helping Osa and Ren tend their farm. When he'd return, Rozek always noticed that Cate was more centered and balanced, but the itch deep down in his soul to find something he couldn't quite name would always consume Cate eventually. But Cate was never closer to anybody than Rozek. Losing his memories of what his brother did when he rescued him just meant that Cate could discover who his brother was all over again. The two launchers were inseparable. Even when they were physically apart, they had a bond that only strengthened as they grew. He would eventually convince his brother to help him kick the Fire Nation from out of Qin Village and erected a statue to Elder Pan Chen there. Eventually, an ailing Pangole approached Cate and offered him a spot in the White Lotus. It took some convincing, but eventually the youngest launcher accepted on the condition that he didn't need to stay in any one place. Pangole agreed. And so Cate traveled the world, stopping at remote villages all around the Earth Kingdom. To many, he became a folk hero, a lone earthbender just trying to make a difference. And when people would ask him how he handled being alone all the time, he would smile, tap the sword on his belt, and say, "I'm never alone." As Cate got older, the trips out became longer and longer before he stopped coming back to Ba Sing Se at all. He wandered the world helping hundreds of people, but he never found what he was looking for. And Elder Cate sent one last messenger hawk to his brother Rozek, who joined him in a remote village in the Earth Kingdom. Cate died soon after his brother came, his heart heavy from a war he could never stop. his brother carried his body all the way to the Northern Water Tribe to a small mountain village called Spirit's End. He was buried near the collapsed entrance to the forge, forever to stand as its guardian, and a statue was erected next to Liko's. Rozek would stop anyone who would listen to tell them all about the one-armed waterbender and the earthbender who threw fire.
Jesus Christ, this is going to be a struggle to get through.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful.
Oh my God.
It is the Earth Kingdom Palace. And there is, it's quiet and a little dark in there. We just hear the echoing of footsteps coming down to the palace throne. And when the camera zooms back out, we see Shoban now standing before a much older, maybe not much older, but a more haggard looking King Ganu, the Earth King. Well, Shoban, anything to report?
Tell me that the Fire Nation is getting closer every day. Have you thought about my proposal?
Yes, I've read it. I don't think it is the answer. I think hiding while protecting the people of Ba Sing Se dooms the world, Sho.
Highness, it is imperative that Ba Sing Se survive this, and I have seen how relentless the Fire Nation is. I think that we need to fortify the walls and stop letting anyone in or out.
A bold suggestion. I have not made a decision. I will continue to think about it.
As is your right, Highness, and I will do until then.
My son was looking for you as well. Said he wanted to practice.
I'll go find him right away.
And Shoban turns around and starts walking out of the Earth King's throne. And again, the scene kind of loses the sound, fades to black. And again, we start seeing scenes as the words are zooming up the screen. The commander of the Dai Li, Shoban, continued to live a life in service to the Earth King. Now that his friends were safe and Shoban could focus on protecting the Earth Kingdom, he rarely left Ba Sing Se, instead throwing himself fully into his work. He was grateful for the assistance offered by Che now, even if Che overstepped his bounds, and he humored Rozek's suggestions. As the war grew, Shoban saw less and less of his old friends, who had all moved on with their own lives. The Earth Kingdom became his focus, and with it, Shoban realized that the only one who could stop this threat was the Avatar. Shoban spent considerable resources trying to find the Avatar, but his search never turned up any concrete leads. And then the cold hard truth finally dawned on Shoban that this war was inevitable, and that the Fire Nation held the upper hand. He quickly shifted his position to convincing the son of King Ganu that once he took over the throne, that the best thing was for Ba Sing Se to focus on isolating itself from the world. Shoban and Mei remained romantically and politically involved for their entire lives, but never married. Mei eventually left the Dai Li, realizing that she could do more work as a humanitarian in the lower ring of Ba Sing Se. As an older man and still head of the Dai Li, Shoban saw war raging across the four nations, and with no lead on where the Avatar might be, he made a difficult decision. Together with his young apprentice Long Feng, the two re-established the base under Lake Laogai, alongside some of the more totalitarian projects the Dai Li researched, including the mind control research from Project Spark. Shoban never saw the end of the war, but he died feeling as though he protected the people of Ba Sing Se to the best of his ability. Rosic, you and Sanfen have been traveling now for a few days. You left Ba Sing Se. She didn't tell you where she was taking you, but you quickly found yourself moving southwest of Ba Sing Se. And a few days go by, and you find yourself looking at the town of Jinu. Your mother stops for a moment, tears in her eyes. Tears are like starting. She's not like crying, but they're starting to well up in her eyes. And she goes, this is where it all started. It felt appropriate to bring you here.
This is what, where you met Ikoro?
No.
No.
This is where I was saved from Ikoro.
Oh.
This is where Now Zhao saved me from Ikoro. I was like, I've heard stories from Che and your other friends about what you've done for them. Che said you stood right in Kavo's path. He said it was incredible to see how you so quickly stood to take the brunt of something you had no idea what it would cost you, and you did it anyway. It reminded me of Now Zhao, back before, well, he found the prophecy right after saving me, but in that brief time, in between saving me from Ikoro and becoming obsessed with a future that could never happen, in that bright, shining moment of protection and sacrifice, I can see where you get it from.
Thank you. I really hope that things get better from here. I hope that Now Zhao turns into a man that I want to become.
Prison has a way of changing people, sometimes for the better.
Mom, never got a chance to say this, but I guess both sorry and not sorry for the things I said back when I came to visit you some time ago. I think you can understand where I was coming from, but I know some of those things hurt you. And I know you're not the perfect mother. And I think you know that, but I can see you trying. And I appreciate that so much.
Now she's crying. Sometimes the prisons we make for ourselves change us for the better too. I love you, Rosic.
love you.
She goes in for a hug. And when she comes out, she wipes the tears away from her eyes and says, I did live here for a couple years before Nowzow came. Maybe I'll show you around.
Like that.
And as you're walking away, the camera zooms out. She goes, did I ever tell you that we all suspected the mayor of killing his wife?
Oh, that's crazy. What?
The two of you continue to talk as the audio cuts out, fades to black, and when it comes back, the pictorial scenes start dancing for us as the words come across. No one could ever quite pin down exactly who Rozek was, and he liked keeping it that way. If people are always on their toes, he would say, they can't see me from down below. And when told that people weren't actually any taller, Rozek refused to comment any further. The oldest launcher had less of a wandering heart than his brother Che, but Rozek was always ready to help his brother out on some of Che's more dangerous trips. Rozek preferred to stay in Ba Sing Se, finally feeling like he could pursue his own passions, and so Rozek founded Pinchy Prawn Academy, an alternative school to Ba Sing Se University. PPA focused almost primarily on just writing whatever came into your head into a notebook. All the students wore a hat with the letters PP stitched into the front, and while PPPA never really took off, Rozek realized he liked teaching, and so he took a dangerous opportunity to enact his own blow against the Fire Nation. Taking a play from his adopted father's playbook, and with the help of his brother in the White Lotus, reformed Nowzow's Project Spark, but this time as a sleeper cell organization within the Fire Nation army. Rozek spent his entire life attempting to stop the Fire Nation from within. When Rozek was much older, he met a young Fire Nation general and heir to the throne, General Iroh. Despite being the brash son of Fire Lord Azulon, Rozek detected something different about this man and took Iroh under his wing. He was always careful to conceal his true motives, but found it easy to confuse the young Iroh. Iroh found Rozek's attentiveness and care something lacking in his own father and latched on to the older firebender's teachings. As one last push, something that Rozek knew would lead Iroh down a very different path from his father and brother. Rozek revealed the location of the dragons that he and his friends saved so long ago. As Iroh left that day, imagining taking the mantle of Dragon of the West, Rozek knew his greatest plan of all, recruiting the son of the Fire Lord as a force of harmony, had just begun. Ren, you are in Ba Sing Se, but over the last few days you have been hearing the strangest rumors. Rumors that the songs are back on Kyoshi Island. Now you know that can't be true. You're here, your mom is dead, and your father's in prison in Ba Sing Se. You defeat a Kavo, so it can't be that.
I have to go investigate.
You begin traveling to Kyoshi Island. And we cut to you standing outside of the ruined and crumbled Song estate on Kyoshi Island. It has not been kept up.
Pirates don't have a way of doing that usually.
They don't really care either. They just move on to the next place to pillage. You begin walking through. You walk right past the spot where you had to kill your mom. You walk right past the spot that you buried her. You see that
Ren
the
has brought
door-
flowers
Hmm.
to set on his mother's grave.
You set the flowers on the grave, and you hear a voice behind you. You know, I've always liked the red ones more.
Yeah. Eyes.
Turn around to
And
see.
stands
your
up and
mom.
embraces.
Chen Song, yeah. The tears are just falling down her face as she's just like blubbering. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
I'm
Never
sorry.
anything like- No, I'm sorry.
I didn't. How? Doesn't matter. No. Mom, you know. And Ren looks down, and there's several sets of older flowers that had been at the grave as well.
Mhm.
I didn't mean to. And I'm so sorry. And I'm glad you're back.
I know. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. It wasn't your fault.
But it was you.
We're together again. Just happy that we can spend time together again.
I'm sorry I didn't bring the red ones.
It's all right. I know where they grow on the mainland. Maybe I'll just move there. Get away from this.
I'd love to have you there. I don't think I'd like to be here very much either. Ren gazes out over the remains of his childhood home. Do you want to visit Dad? I don't. But I know where he is. If that's something you wanted.
I think for the first time in my life, I'm free from him. And I don't think I want to go back.
Mom, you know I don't blame you for all those years in the house.
She gets silent. I should have done more.
It would have been hard for anyone to say a word against him.
Well, she smiles. He's not standing in our way now. She gives you a hug. And
I'm also sorry that I gave away all of our money to pirates. I didn't think you would come back to life.
That's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
We are comfortable though.
We'll start a new life.
On the
Start a new
mainland.
life. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
It'll be fine. The scene fades to black, and after the battle with Kavo, Rensong was seemingly at peace. He finally had what he wanted out of life, his friends safe and no dangerous obstacles to overcome. But Ren realized something else, that he and his family had gone through hell and back, and that nothing could separate that connection. And so Ren was content for a time. But he quickly became antsy to start a life with Osa, and the two found a spot near the Western Air Temple to start a farm. It was close to a spirit portal for the times that Osa needed to preside over the cycle of rebirth and allow the two of them to keep a close eye on the Fire Nation. The pastoral life agreed with Ren, and he quickly threw himself into his hobbies. while he gave up his title of Pirate King and Captain to First Mate Mawak, Ren would still, on occasion, dress up as a pirate lord and join his old crew to harass lone Fire Nation ships. And for those that followed the theater, sometime after the Kavo incident, a new playwright emerged on the scene, the mysterious Ho Golung. Ren enjoyed writing plays anonymously and found his greatest success with his play The Boy Who Was Born a Man, a fictionalized retelling of the adventures that he and his friends found themselves on. Ren never visited Aisong, still imprisoned under the Earth King Palace, and his mother, now alive, a fortunate side effect of Kavo's rupture of the cycle of rebirth, resettled in a small village in the Earth Kingdom. Ren visited her often, and the two became close throughout the rest of Chen Song's life. But there was one person in Ren's family that was still missing, Gimo. And so Captain Wolfclaw set out on one last adventure. By himself, Ren scoured the Four Nations for any news of his mentor in Major Domo. He braved perilous Fire Nation soldiers, mercenaries, and bandits, but eventually found Gimo in a small village in the Southern Water Tribe. Gimo was at the end of his life, but had enough strength to make one last trip to Ren and Osa's farm. When they arrived, Ren provided care for his ailing father figure until Gimo's last breath. Ren lived the rest of his life on that farm. He died peacefully, surrounded by all of his friends, but most importantly, the love of his life, Osa. The world remembered him by many names: Captain Wolfclaw, Ho Golung, the heir to the Song estate, but to his friends, they always remembered Ren as the one who kept them all together. It is just a couple days after you've returned from fighting Kavo, and you all, but we're going to focus on Osa, are in Omashu. There's a giant procession and wailing for the much beloved King Malu. You were invited, obviously, by now King Bumi, who, as one of your close friends, wanted you to be there for his dad's funeral. You sit through the service, comfort Bumi, and then you leave because you have another funeral to get to. And this one is the stark opposite of King Malu's funeral. There is no one there except for one person. Toko is standing, waiting for you all in front of Kasa's casket. You sit, share stories. And at some point, Toko sits down next to Osa with an old, well, boy, welcome back.
Thanks. I'm sorry, Toko.
It's life, you know. People that aren't supposed to die, and people that I don't know. I'll miss her.
Me too. I've been trying to bring her back. I've been trying to fix everything that happened. I can't.
Osa, as long as I've known you, taking your pain, try to work it out in the world. Sometimes things that are broken, things that don't make sense to us, just have to sit. And they're for us to think about and to learn from. Can't fix everything. Some things don't need to be fixed.
How did you become so wise, Toko?
I've had to sit with a lot of broken things. Tell me, was it worth it? Taking out she?
I thought it would be. And Osa looks around the room at his friend. I broke more than I fixed when I did that. But I got a second chance. And he looks at Ren. And I got to fix some other things. So in the end, yeah.
He gives a very weary smile. You're getting it. Put his arm around you. And the scene fades to black again. And when it comes up, we see the last little vignette of what happens to Osa. Osa, now the spirit of rebirth, lived in two worlds, but always felt pulled in two different directions. Together with Rensong, he lived the rest of Ren's life in their quiet farm outside of the Western Air Temple. Osa was glad to let Ren go on the occasional mission, as he would have business to take care of in the spirit world. And when Red would come back, the two of them couldn't get enough of each other, tending their garden and livestock and welcoming all of their old friends for visits. They were happy. But Osa knew in the back of his mind that this would end. Ren grew older. Osa did not, remaining as young and vibrant as the day he merged with Hawashu. And as his powers grow and his control over them strengthened, Osa began to understand what his real role was. Iron and Kavo thought that the spirit of rebirth could control the flow of reincarnation, but Osa came to realize that for anyone to choose who lives and who dies, even the spirit of rebirth, would be an affront to the entire cycle. Osa could bring people back, but he refused to. A conversation that Ren and he had many times. Ren was only alive thanks to a miracle and some luck, and Osa was just thankful that they had any time together. Despite his initial protests, Ren eventually learned to respect Osa's wishes for Ren to not move to the spirit world permanently. The two made the most of their lives together and filled it with wonderful memory after wonderful memory. However, the spirit of rebirth also had to live the remainder of his life with a great secret. For soon after mastering his new station over the cycle of rebirth, Osa couldn't feel the avatar spirit in the cycle. He knew that this meant that the avatar was still alive, and so Osa chose to believe that the avatar would return when the world needed him most. When Ren died, an old man in the arms of his partner and the love of his life, Osa knew it was time to move on. He buried Ren next to his mother in the small village of the Earth Kingdom and moved to his roost on Hawashi's mountain permanently. Despite losing Ren, the Great Spirit had a sense of contentment. He had done everything that he wanted to, avenged his brothers and sisters at the Air Temple, protected his friends from dangerous spirits, and carved out a peaceful existence in the midst of war. He had lived a good life, and now he could ensure that life continued on for everyone else. And that is the end of the Flying Bison Podcast campaign.
Whew.
Oh wait, I had wait, I just thought of one more scene. It was literally like in the shower this morning. I think this is like the last thing. This is the last thing, I promise you.
Say that again.
It's the last thing.
Okay.
It is, I don't know, probably like 98 years after this campaign. And we open on a mountain in the spirit world, and we zoom in on the top, and we zoom in on Osa. He's just sitting and meditating. And then the scene shifts very dramatically and suddenly to an iceberg in the Southern Water Tribe that is cracked. A light shoots out into the sky, and back on the mountain, Osa opens his eyes with that same bright blue light and goes, "It's time." And that is where the campaign ends.
I dig it.
I dig it.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you all.
What an ending.
Man. I told you this wouldn't be 2 hours. What?
What do we do with ourselves now?
I think we
Right,
just sit
like-
here. I think we just...
I'm supposed to go work in a kitchen after this.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Bring your
What?
best to that kitchen. That's what Rosic would want.
So this whole thing was going to look totally different, and I knew Nick was going to be gone, so I wrote Chase, and I was like, this is too good. I feel like every character needs something like this. And so I quick started writing all of them and sent them to all of you. And
Yeah, thank you
here we
for
are.
your thoughtfulness in helping us craft an end for each of these characters.
Gosh, it's like
I want to
my
launch
favorite.
into like tender reflection mode, but we got to save it for Behind the
I know.
Bison.
Let's save it for
So-
Behind the Bison. We appreciate all the listeners. I appreciate you. I appreciate these wonderful players I have. It's just fun to get to tell stories,
Mm-hmm.
the sad and the happy. And so we are not done playing tabletop role-playing games in any sort of respect. We'll be back next fall with both Scum and Villainy and continued Avatar stories. I'm really excited to see what Steve brings to the Avatar world as the GM. And for now, we hope you enjoyed exploring the Four Nations with us, and we'll see you back in the Avatar world on September 24th. But catch all of the stuff that we do in between now and then. Bye, everybody.
Hi.
Bye.
Bye.